Well, thank you so much for being here today. I just want to start out by introducing myself. My name is Megan Coombs, and I am currently finishing up my bachelor's degree in marriage and family studies at Brigham Young University, Idaho. And to be completely honest with you, I chose this degree kind of by default. I had to do an online degree because I needed to be able to stay home with my kids, and I really was not interested in any of the other degree options. And so I wanted to finish though, and I just said, okay, well, I'll just do this one, which is a silly reason to get a degree, but I did. But as I began studying about families and about the impact that they have on individuals and society as a whole, whether they're strong or weak, it became a passion of mine. It really became something that I'm very interested in and that I really love having the ability to share with others as well. So today, we are going to look at some different tools that can strengthen your marriages. In 2012, well, every couple of years, the University of Virginia and the Institute for American Values work together to create something called the State of Our Unions. And this is essentially just a big compilation of research that has been done on marriage in our society, particularly the United States, and how it's doing currently, what the trends are, and different things like that. And one of the overwhelming themes for the 2012 report was that marriage is seen in society today as being optional. So if marriage is not completely fulfilling to you at that time, then you should have no qualms about walking away. However, we should really be making marriage a priority in our lives rather than just giving up on it. A lot of times in our culture today, we tend to prioritize work, leisure, and media above our marriage. And something else that is a very common trend is to put our children above our marriage relationships. And this is a tricky one because, of course, being their parents, we need to provide for them. We need to be there and to be able to fulfill their needs and to be able to help them to grow and develop the way that they need to. So we do have to invest a lot of time into that relationship. But our children's stability actually relies on the security and the stability of our marriage. So the best gift that we can give our children is to have a strong marriage and to put that above even our relationship with our children. So today we're going to, like I said, we're going to hopefully give you some tools that you can use to strengthen your marriage. And we're going to use two main sources in our discussion today. The first is from the Gottman Institute, and this is work done by Dr. John Gottman. He is basically renowned as the nation's leading expert in marriage relationships. And he has been doing research for over 40 years on how couples interact and communicate with each other. And at this point, he can watch a couple discuss a conflict in their relationship, and he can predict with 94% accuracy whether or not that couple will get a divorce in the future. So he really understands those communication dynamics in a marriage. The next source that we're going to be using today is called couple communication. And this is something that a lot of therapists use. It's one of the best resources for understanding how to communicate effectively as a couple. It began at the University of Minnesota Family Center, and it's run by several doctors there. And it's actually been translated into over a dozen languages and received numerous awards. So this is another great resource that I'm excited to share with you guys today. So the first thing that I want you to do is to just write down on your paper a couple goals that you have, especially with regards to how you communicate with your spouse. Maybe think about 1 year and maybe 5 years down the road. What things would you like to see change? What things would you like to improve on? And just take a second to go ahead and write those down. Okay. So before we begin, I want to introduce something that Dr. Gottman calls the Four Horsemen. And these are basically 4 communication behaviors that is frequently present in a marital relationship. They often predict divorce. If any of you are familiar with the 4 horsemen of the Bible, you know that these are said to be the signs that are to usher in the end of the world. So Dr. Gottman calls these communication behaviors the 4 horsemen because obviously they don't usher in the end of the world, but they do typically spell the end of marriage if they are frequently present in your communication. So I just want you to jot down on your paper, go ahead and take a guess, think about what 4 communication behaviors might be so detrimental that they would cause the end of marriage. Okay, so before we begin that, I want to introduce something that Dr. Gottman calls the harsh startup. And I want to start out with this because having a harsh startup often leads to having the 4 horsemen in your conversation. So a harsh startup is really pretty self-explanatory. It's basically beginning a conversation in a negative, accusatory, sarcastic, or critical way. So just right off the bat, you're jumping in there and you're attacking your spouse, and you're just right off the bat, you're really negative and critical. And Gottman actually said that you can predict the conversation, the outcome of the conversation 96% of the time within the first 3 minutes. So if you begin a conversation on a negative note, it's almost inevitable that you're going to end it on a negative note as well. So it's really critical to understand that when you go into a conversation, especially one that's likely to cause contention, you need to do it with a softened startup. You need to be, you don't want to start out in that negative tone and that accusatory tone and things like that. You want to really be careful about how you start that conversation. And I actually have some examples here. So if you want to pause, you can read. There's the quote number 1. On your quotes page, there's quote number 1. This is an example of a harsh startup. And it's certainly not the most extreme example. There are lots more harsh startups than that. But it's just to show you that even just a little bit of negativity at the beginning of a conversation can really derail it. And then if you want to read quote number 2, that's going to be an example of a softened startup. And that is the same conversation, but they're approaching it with a lot more respect for each other. They're willing to listen to one another and to try to understand each other rather than just right off the bat jumping in there in that negative way. All right. So the 4 horsemen. So I would typically, in this setting, divide the group into 4 and then have everybody read about each of the 4 horsemen. Criticism is the first one. So if you look at your handout also that's on the 4 horsemen that I've sent to you, that's going to have a little bit of explanation about criticism. But basically, criticism is when you're complaining about your spouse or you're criticizing your spouse versus just complaining about that one little issue that happened. So you're attacking your spouse's character rather than just addressing the one problem. An example might be if your spouse didn't take out the trash. Instead of saying, hey, you didn't take out the trash like I asked you to, would you please do that? You'd be saying, oh my goodness, you never listen to me. You never take out the trash when I asked you to. How many times do I have to ask you to do that? That's a criticism because you're criticizing that person as opposed to just addressing the one issue at hand. The next of the 4 horsemen is contempt. And this is basically criticism on the next level. Gottman said contempt is poisonous to the relationship because it conveys disgust. And so basically you're assuming that your spouse is not capable of anything. You just attack their character on every level. An example of this might be if you have sorry, I just lost my train of thought. If there's a husband who maybe hasn't been helping out around the house as much, and the wife had been complaining about that, she really wants to have some more help with the chores around the house, and they've tried a lot of different things, but the husband says, okay, well, maybe if I can just have 15 minutes at home before I start on the chores, so just give me 15 minutes to kind of decompress when I get home. Instead of saying, okay, I don't know if that will work, but I'm willing to try it, thanks for suggesting something, let's give it a shot, she might respond with, you really think that you're going to be motivated to help after 15 minutes? You're just going to jump up and start helping? So right off the bat, she's just attacking him. She's saying, you can't do anything like that. You just don't work that way. So that's contempt. The next one is defensiveness. And defensiveness is really a way of blaming your partner instead of yourself. Saying that the problem is with them, not with you. You're trying to save face, and you're trying to not take credit or responsibility for anything that might have gone wrong. Defensiveness, again, you can look at your papers a little bit more about that, but it's a very natural reaction that all of us have. And so we're going to jump back to that here in just a minute, but let's look at this last of the 4 horsemen. This is the last one, and it is called stonewalling. I don't know about you, but I am a champion stonewaller. At least I used to be. I really have worked on that. Gottman actually says that it's mainly a male characteristic, but I really knew how to stonewall with the best of them. And this is basically when you're talking with your spouse and you just kind of get so worked up that you just don't respond anymore. You just are at a point where you're feeling, Gottman calls it flooded, you just cannot take it anymore, and you just sit there. So in a typical conversation, you're going to, nod, you're going to respond to who you're talking to, you're going to let them know that you're kind of with them. Stonewallers don't do that. They just stare straight ahead, do not respond, don't give any indication that they're even there. And this is so frustrating for your spouse when they're trying to talk to you. Even if they're not doing things perfectly, they might be being critical or contemptuous or whatever, but they're trying to still communicate with you, and you're just sitting there refusing to give them anything. So stonewalling is really detrimental as well. Next, we will go ahead, and this is just a little video, just a recap from the Gottman Institute. Honestly, some of the examples are a little bit silly, but it kind of just recaps what we just talked about, and I'll go ahead and send a link for that if you want to watch it. But to jump back to defensiveness, this is, like I said, it's a very natural reaction. Anytime somebody is attacking us, or we feel that they're attacking us, or even if we just feel like they're disagreeing with us, our natural reaction is to defend ourselves. We want to make sure that we're not the ones who are left in the bad light. But it's really not a good thing to have in our conversations. It really doesn't do any good. So Harriet Lerner wrote a book called Marriage Rules, and in it she has 12 steps to help you to avoid defensiveness. We're not going to go over all 12 today, but I'll send you a handout with all 12. But we'll just look at the first 3. So the first one is to name it. And essentially, this is just recognizing that you're being defensive. And doing that just gives you a little bit of distance from that, because you're saying, okay, I'm being offensive, I don't want to be this way. So you're at least recognizing that. The second step is to breathe. Defensiveness actually starts in our body. Our central nervous system gets overheated, and we get to this point where we just can't process information in a healthy way. And you can't have a productive conversation when you're feeling that way. So there's a lot of different ways to calm yourself down and to get to a state where you're feeling neutral again. But breathing is one of those ways that you can do that. And you can count down from 10 while you take a deep breath, or whatever you need to do to get yourself calmed down from the inside out is helpful. The third step is to not interrupt your spouse. If you can't listen to your spouse without interrupting, that's a good indicator that you haven't calmed down, and you need to probably go ahead and just take a step back from the conversation and and finish that conversation another time when you have calmed down, because you're really not going to go anywhere good if you're that worked up. Okay, so now that we have discussed the don't do behaviors, let's look at something that will help you to understand some positive, some good things that you can do to help you to be better communicators. The first is called the awareness wheel. This is from Couple Communication. And basically, this helps you to understand how you came to feel the way you did. So it helps you to understand the root cause for your feelings. In our society, and just probably in the world in general, but we tend to be very superficial thinkers. We tend to look only on the surface, and we don't always look to see what the underlying problem is. But just like a weed, if you pull a weed out at the top and the roots are still there, we all know that it's going to come back, and it's probably going to be a bigger weed than before. So understanding the root cause of your issues is going to help you to really resolve those and to communicate that with your spouse. If you can't tell your spouse how you're feeling effectively, then there's no way they're going to know. So you have to understand it first and then share it with them. So the first step in this awareness wheel is called sensory data. And this is basically just understanding what's going on around you, what you can see, hear, taste, feel, different things like that with your senses. An example might be if a husband walks out of a bathroom and says, wow, that bathroom is really dirty. That's something probably everybody can agree on. These are usually the facts of the situation. So the bathroom, maybe he smelled it's terribly dirty, or maybe you can look around and see it really needs to be cleaned. So that's sensory data. The next step is your thoughts. And these are your assumptions, your attitudes, your opinions, your beliefs, your values, and it's the meaning that we give to things. It's how we think about things. And these influence our perceptions. So here's an example, and this is a very silly example, but my husband and I were driving to church one day, and I asked him, does my hair look okay? And he said, yeah, it doesn't look bad. Well, that's not really what I wanted to hear. I didn't want to not look bad that day. I wanted to look good that day. And so I was a little bit upset about that. and I wanted to hear something different from him. So if we look at this, actually, I'm so sorry. We're gonna look at that example here in a second with feelings. But if we revisit the example about the husband coming out of the bathroom, the wife, when she hears her husband say, wow, the bathroom is really dirty, she might assume that he's saying that she's not doing a good enough job keeping up with the housework, or different things like that, and then she's going to get upset. Where in reality, he might just be saying, ooh, the bathroom's dirty, or maybe he's even offering to clean it later that day. Who knows? But that's a thought that she's having because she's making an assumption about what he's saying. She's interpreting what he's saying. So, sorry, to move on. So, if we look at the next step, it's feelings. And feelings are basically information about what's going on in other areas of our awareness wheel. So, how we're thinking and what our wants are and different things like that. Something to remember with feelings is if you're saying, I feel like XYZ, it's probably actually a thought, not a feeling. So for example, if you tell your spouse, I feel like you're not listening to me, that's not actually a feeling. You think that he's not listening to you. A feeling would be included in this, where you might say, I feel hurt when you don't listen to me. So you can see the difference there. You're expressing your feeling about your thought. But if we look again at that example of my husband and I's exchange in the car on the way to church, I felt offended and hurt because I felt like he was saying, yeah, you don't look good, but you don't look bad. Where that's not what he meant. But if I looked down on if I just looked at the surface, he would probably be thinking, oh my goodness, this is so silly. I can't believe she's offended that I said she doesn't look bad. And he would be annoyed, and it would just become this kind of silly thing that didn't need to happen. But I was able to look at the root cause of it, and I realized I had been feeling a little bit insecure lately for other various reasons. And so when I was able to express to him how I had been feeling insecure, and so then when he said that I didn't look good, like I wanted to hear, but he only said I didn't look bad, I interpreted that to mean that I didn't look good. And when I was able to explain that to him, he still maybe thought it was a little silly, but he at least was able to understand where I came from, where I was coming from, and how I got to those feelings. And it also helped him in the future to be more aware of things like that and to think about his word choice maybe. So when you can share those feelings with your spouse, it helps you to connect on a deeper level. It helps you to really understand each other's perspective in a way that you don't understand if you're just looking at that surface problem. So the last area of this wheel that we're going to talk about today is our wants. And these are basically our dreams, our goals, our hopes, our aspirations, and they are motivators. They motivate us to action. All of us humans have three basic wants. We want to be, we want to have, and we want to do. So to be, you might want to be honest, you might want to be respected or well-liked or appreciated or healthy. To do, it might be as simple as I want to finish this book, I want to make dinner, I want to graduate, I want to increase my income. To have might be, I want to have a good education, I want to have stimulating relationships, I want to have an exciting job. The list goes on and on and on. But those are the wants that we have. And it's important to understand what your wants are too, because as I said, they motivate you and they can shape your thoughts and your feelings as well. So now that we kind of understand our own feelings a little bit better, one more thing that we should do before we talk to our spouse and bring up an issue that might cause contention is something called metacommunication. And this is basically where we're communicating about communication. So if you can look inside yourself and evaluate how you're feeling in two different areas, number one, your energy levels, and number two, your openness to a topic, that's going to help you to understand if it's a good time or not to bring up an issue, kind of a touchy issue in your relationship. So energy level, if you are exhausted, you've had a really long day and you are just so ready to go to bed, really it's probably not a great time to bring up an issue that's going to cause contention, because it's kind of self-explanatory. You need to have energy. It takes effort to have these types of conversations. And typically we're short on patience and we just want to get it over with when we're really tired. The next one, openness to the topic. If you think about the topic at hand and you think about your spouse's response, what they might have to say about it, what you think they're going to say, and it just makes you cringe, you just can't even think about that at that point in time, that's a good indicator that you're not feeling very open to it, and you're probably not going to be able to talk about it in a very productive way. So if you can rate yourself an 8 or above in both of these areas on the 10-point scale, then that's a good time to have that conversation. But if you haven't felt like you're maybe an 8 or above in either of those areas, then it would be better to try to work on getting to an 8 and then have that conversation rather than doing it anyway. Next, and I will send you a link for this as well. This is a video by William Ury, and he is an expert negotiator. He is employed by Fortune 500 companies and even world leaders to help them in their negotiations. And a huge part of negotiating is understanding how to listen. So this is a TED Talk that he gave on the importance of listening, and it's really worth a listen. So if you have a minute, I'll send that link and you can listen to that as well. But as you can probably guess, the last thing that we're going to talk about today, again, is from verbal communication, and it's called the listening cycle. So the very first part of listening, let me jump back. It is really important to understand how to listen to your spouse. It's critical to a conversation. If you can't listen, you're not going to be able to communicate with them. So this cycle is going to help you to understand how to be a good listener and how to really give your spouse that attention. And something to remember, when you are listening to your spouse, when they're talking to you, you have one goal at that point in time, and that should be just to understand them. Just understand. You don't need to decide if you agree or disagree right away. You don't need to do anything else. You just need to understand fully what they're saying. So the first step in doing this is to attend. If I am sitting here and I'm doing my homework on my computer, or I'm on my phone, and my husband comes up and he's telling me something about his day, and I'm sitting there, and I'm texting someone or whatever it is I'm doing, and I'm kind of glancing over every now and then, yeah, oh yeah. What am I telling my spouse? I'm telling him, this is where I want to be. This is where my attention is. You are interrupting what I really want to be doing right now. I want to be focused on my phone right now, or I want to be focused on this book that I'm reading, or whatever else it is you're doing. So to attend, put down what it is that you're working on and physically turn your body towards your spouse and give them your attention. Look at them in the eye and tell them through your body language, you're important to me and I want to hear what you have to say. And that's something that a lot of us are guilty with in this technology age, because we always have something in our hands, it seems. People always have phones or computers or just different things going on that are distracting us. And we really need to learn how to put those things down and focus on the conversation that we want to have with our spouse. The next one is to acknowledge. And this is basically just letting your spouse know that you're with them. Saying something like, yeah, I can see you're really upset about that. It just shows I'm listening to you. Next is to summarize. And this is basically just repeating back in your own words what you heard your spouse say. And this is something that probably a lot of us have heard. But it really helps your spouse to, again, see that you're listening, and also gives them the opportunity to clear up any miscommunications that might have occurred. Next on this listening cycle is to invite. And this is where you are asking for more information. So very simple, tell me more about it. What happened next? You're just inviting and encouraging your spouse to keep talking to you, letting them know that you're interested. Last on this is to ask open-ended questions. And these are typically W questions: who, what, when, where, and how. And you can use these questions to clear up mixed messages, to just understand more of the situation. But something that's important to remember here is to avoid, if at all possible, why questions. Why questions are often accusatory and negative in tone. And just to give you an example of that, let's say a husband and wife are going to go hiking. So the wife might say, hey, you said you would go hiking with me this weekend, but you look like you're not really excited. Is there something you'd rather do? That's okay. That's, you're asking, you're trying to understand the situation. Whereas if the wife said, why aren't you excited to go hiking this weekend? Or even, hey, you said you'd go hiking with me this weekend, but you're not excited, or it doesn't look like you're excited, why not? You can see in both of those examples that the husband is immediately going to feel like he has to defend himself. Whereas with the first example, they can just talk about it. He can say, yeah, I'm not excited. I'm sorry. I've been so tired this week. Or, it's been raining and I'm just worried that it's not going to be fun this weekend. Or, so it gives them the opportunity to talk about it when you ask those open-ended questions. But when you ask the why questions, they immediately want to be defensive and they immediately feel like you're attacking them. So that's important there. Asking questions is great. but the why questions usually are not a good idea. All right. So today we have gone over several different tools that hopefully will help you to strengthen your marriage. There's a lot of information here, and usually if you try to dive into everything at once, it can be a little overwhelming. So I would encourage you to just maybe choose 3 things with your spouse that you feel like you can really benefit from and that can really help to strengthen and improve your marriage. And then go ahead and make a commitment with each other to start working on that and to help each other in those areas so that you can see those improvements. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.